All right, starting out episode 3
Episode
of the...
3.
Yeah, you missed out on doing that the last time, but that is Chris Miller cutting in on my intro as usual.
Hey,
Episode 3 of the Short Track Radio Podcast. We've switched locations. We've moved less than 5 minutes down the road from the Speedway at Chris's grandparents' place.
Yeah, if it wasn't illegal, you could just drive your car to the track, but
I
frowned upon.
I don't think anybody's ever done that before in the history of Western Speedway.
Not here.
No. But, of course, the guest we have is nodding his head that he has done that. He for legal reasons, he has
Allegedly.
not done that. Yes, allegedly. But our guest this evening is George Jenson, president of the Old Time Racers Association and the driver of the number 25 Old Timer out at Western Speedway. George, thanks for joining us this evening.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, obviously, you're involved quite a lot with the Old Timers. You've raced in the club for a very long time. Maybe tell us about what the club has planned for their 2018 season.
We got a lot of good races coming up, and then obviously there's some down in the States. We're trying to set one up right now for Saratoga on July 27th, so be nice to run back up there again this year.
Yeah, I missed out on that, unfortunately, the last 2 years, I believe, due to some unforeseen circumstances, and always good to get those cars up island and promote the club all across the island, not just at Western.
Oh, for sure. You know, we got a great car count last year, and we'd like to continue with that. And now that we have the car count and we get some cars to go up to Saratoga, it's going to look really good up there.
And, of course, talking about the car count, you're kind of responsible for 3 cars. You've got your daughter and your son out there. How cool is it to go out there and race with them?
Oh, it's pretty cool. You know, they've been around since when I first started racing. I think Chris was 3 years old, so now that he's up there and he gets to jump into a car, and daughter Kaylin, and you know, she's even older. She's 9 years older than Chris, so for her to get into a car is something she's always wanted. So it's pretty cool, and it's nice to pass it down. You know, I don't think there's many more years for me to get in there, but I still enjoy it, and it's a lot of work for 3 cars because I mechanic all 3 of them. So it's been a long winter for me, and things are looking good.
George, why don't you tell us how you got into racing?
I got into racing when I was 10 years old. Actually, I started with the Courier Brothers, and everybody knows number 25. I tribute to the Courier Brothers. I started repacking wheel bearings on a 1949 Ford stock car. That was my job for John Courier, Mike Courier, and Pat Courier, the Courier Brothers, and it's been out there ever since, so I'm looking at 51 years of being associated with the track.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think you were showing me a picture last night, and it might be up on Facebook, that you with a go-kart that you won in a contest?
Yeah, at Western Speedway, they were given a Grant King go-kart that was built with a fiberglass Indy body on it, and we bought lots of tickets for it, obviously, and we were sitting in the stands. I think I was 12 years old at that time, or 11 or 12. And my dad had the ticket, and he was reading the numbers off as they were going through, and then I just sort of got ecstatic and won myself a go-kart. Well, I guess my dad won it for me.
Yeah, it was gifted. I don't think Dad could quite fit in the go-kart.
No, I don't think so.
Now, maybe explain how you got into actually driving one of these race cars out at Western.
Well, I was crewing for Rob Scott, and he was driving Milt Barnes's cars, so I started working. I was working on the Super Stock with Rob, and he was having so much fun in the old timers when he jumps out of the Super Stock and running for points and, you know, everything, and then getting into the old timer, getting out, and he was laughing, just having a great time. So I guess about 3 years of crewing with him, Mike Courier bought the Coca-Cola number 21 car, and he was looking for a driver, and there it goes back. What comes around goes around, all the way back to when we were when I was a little kid, and Mike asked me to drive, and I just couldn't say no. I had to get behind the wheel. So I started thanks to the Courier brothers again.
What other classes have you run in? Obviously, Old Timers is your main one, but...
In 77, I ran demos, and then I ran some claimers, and then I ran my boss at the time at Edmunds Tires when I worked there. He bought a stock car, and he couldn't drive it very much, so I ended up jumping into the stock car for a bit, and then took a few years off. I did a lot of crewing with Roy Haslam, and I could go on. John Courier, obviously, when I was a kid, and then Roy Haslam. I crewed a bit for Dave Delby, crewed for Rob Scott, a lot of that sort of stuff, and it just developed into getting into behind the wheel.
Obviously, you mentioned, or Chris mentioned, you've been in the Old Timers for most of your racing career out at Western, all over the Pacific Northwest. What about that particular class has kept you interested in it as long as you've been involved?
Well, I think it's the people. It's so cool that it's just like a big family type atmosphere. When I first started driving, and then I got to go down to the States, and then I saw how everybody helped everybody down there. It was pretty amazing, and just continued on as it was so much fun. It's exciting to drive, the open wheels, the affordability back then was awesome. I had a low budget, so it was something that I was able to run at a low budget and also be competitive. So it wasn't until the last probably 10 years that I've had the ability to have something that's half decent. A lot of that other stuff was just put together.
Yeah, I think because we don't run for points, I think that helping out each other really stands out, because you want to beat the best to be the best. And
well, you want everybody to be out there.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. Is I always stress is car count, right? And if you can help somebody get their car out, it's just better for the club, and it's better for everything, And it's true. I'd rather race against 20 cars than 7.
Yeah. Exactly.
The last few years we were down to pretty low car count, and it's fun getting out there, but it's not really as much fun as trying to fight your way through 20 cars.
Yeah. I have to ask you this question because it's basically why I came up with the idea of doing this is our logo says Short Track Radio Racing Stories. So I was just curious, what is your most favorite cherished memory from the track?
Oh, I think when I go back, I think the most excited and the best win I've ever had was a sort of a sad one, because in 1999 I lost my brother-in-law, which I still get very emotional about, Denny Rand, and we had a tribute race for him, and I beat Bob Exton by a bumper, if that. And my whole family was there, because it was Daffodil Cup night, and Trevor Montgomery, won the Daffodil Cup that night, and then I won the Old Timer main event, and it was just cool to do it in front of my whole family, and that's cousins, nephews, everybody was there, so it was pretty exciting.
Special moment there.
Yeah, definitely, and you're still involved, obviously, with the Rand family, working at the Rand Automotive, longtime employee there.
Yeah, I've been there coming up 31 years in July, and there again, it's a family business that Denny started, and a couple years after he started, he got a hold of me and said, "Are you interested in coming to work for him?" And I wasn't hesitated at all. I said, "Yeah, I'll come and work," and I've been there ever since. And Jerry Rand, now his son, has a business after unfortunate happened with Denny, so it's a thriving business. I'm really busy down there. It's really good.
And obviously, you talked a little bit earlier about the old-timer car count kind of dwindling. You guys obviously worked really hard to build it back up in the last few years. What can you kind of attribute to the class growing back to the 20-plus cars at pretty much every race?
I think it's really to do with we put a couple of people in the old timers that were younger guys, and Troy Tarbuck is probably a big part of getting the old timers coming back with all his friends and everybody that's in there, and he just got all these guys excited about it, and the excitement just seemed to build and build and build, and it was really good, and it's good to get new blood in there. I had Kyle Cottam in the 12 car. I had Richard in the 12 car. I've had a bunch of stock car guys in the 12 car, and Kyle Cottam got out of that car, and he was just so excited. He was like, "This is the best thing I've driven. No pressure, just had fun." He wheeled that car around there and did a great job. Aaron Wilkie put the 12 car in and got second fast time one night. So Aaron's actually, I'm not going to drive Friday night at the Daffodil Cup weekend because I don't have any luck on that night. So Aaron Wilkie's going to drive my car on the Friday night.
Cool. That's another question I had here for you.
Chris's list of pre-questions.
You talked about like you don't have very many years left, maybe or possibly driving the car. After you're done racing, do you think you'll continue on with old timers as either a car owner or executive or just crewing?
Oh, for sure I will. It's been a great club. I think it's one of the best clubs in the Pacific Northwest. I'm definitely going to continue after I stop driving, and I'll put somebody in my car, and I'll still have the kids driving. So, I said that accident last year when I did the belly flop in the Friday night, that took a lot out of me. It threw my back out, and it took me 5 months to get my shoulder back into shape. So, it seems that getting older, they get hurt more.
Yeah, and that incident at Daffodil Cup didn't look too bad from the stands, but when you think about that car landing as high in the air as the rear of the car was, must have been a pretty solid shot from inside the car.
Well, I've hit the wall a couple of times, like when James lost it that one time in Friday night Daffodil Cup, put me in the wall. That was a hard hit, but it was nothing like that belly flop that I did. I climbed up pretty high. I actually thought I was going on my roof, but when I landed, it jarred right through to my head, and I actually blacked out a bit. And like I said, my right shoulder was pinched. My left arm's been numb for about 6 months after that. So finally got feeling back in my arm, and my back is a little bit better. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely those solid hits. Right as soon as it comes down, goes right up through the seat and travels. I guess you're the path that it has to travel through.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a pretty hard jar. Let's put it that way, right through the seat.
I've studied a lot of psychology in post-secondary, and I was just curious if you had some sort of like race day routine that you go through, or when you get in the car, is there any like superstitions or anything like that?
I don't think I have any superstitions except for maybe certain things I wear.
Yeah.
And I still get butterflies, every time. Once you get in the car and you start moving, the butterflies go away. But it's butterflies of excitement, right? It's lots of fun.
Yeah. What else we got here, Cole?
Well, again, obviously, George has been involved with the club a long time. Maybe talk a bit about your 2018 plans for yourself. Obviously, helping Kaylin and Chris out, but a few things in the works for the 25 car itself.
You're going to see a new look out there this year with the car. It's been the same look for a few years, so I think some people are going to be a little surprised at it. It's going to go back a little bit retro, and the graphics on it are going to be a little bit retro, but just different. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to a new look, and I think everybody's going to be surprised at it.
George is trying to keep that new look under wraps. I did get a sneak peek at it, and it does look pretty cool, I have to say. And I think Chris has another question lined up here.
Yeah, I was just curious, like, over your time with the old timers, how have you seen it change? Obviously, we've seen the car count, but is there any other changes that you've that you've noticed?
It's pretty consistent, and that's the nice thing about the club. Even with the new people coming in, it's a little different because of the old veterans. Like, we had Bob Exton, Dan Morneau, and Jim Rankin, and, the list goes on. And those guys have always been great club members and always did a lot for the club. There's always those people that step up and do a lot for the club, and it's important to have them to step up, and I'm hoping that some of the younger guys in the club can see that and step up, and like there's time for change, and some of these people have got to step up and do the job.
Yeah. The thing that I like about old timers is that even those old guys like Jim Rankin always comes up to the 71 car, says, hey Chris, how's it going? Or like, hey James, how's the car going? And stuff like that. And they always have, you tell them what's going on with the car, and they'll always like suggest something. Here, try this. That experience that they have is with the old timers, and most of the cars they're exactly the same. They're all built by pretty much one guy, and Dan did a great job at building those cars, and he made it easy enough for everyone to share parts, share setups, and stuff like that. So that's what I really appreciate about the old timers.
Yeah, it's a good point. Those old guys that are still hanging around have a lot of info, and I get a lot of the younger guys saying, "Oh, why don't we try this and why don't we try that?" And it's like, you know what? It's been tried already.
Yeah, it's been done before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, without Dan Morneau, I don't think, or the whole Morneau family, I don't think that the old timers would be. The car count wouldn't be there. Obviously, Dan built how many of them?
Oh man, Dan probably built like 10 cars.
Yeah.
And I think 8 of them are still around. I think only a couple of them are gone.
It's crazy.
And obviously, when the old timers started, it was kind of reviving the old stock cars that raced at Langford Speedway and Western in the early days. And now that kind of the bodies have dried up, but we already have, you have some cars that are sitting in fields still, and a lot of people still have opportunities to resurrect cars that have already been resurrected in a way.
Oh yeah, there's cars out there. There's a couple that they're for sale, and it'd be nice for somebody to pick them up. And there's a couple of them that's been sitting a long time that would be a good project for somebody to pick up at a half decent price. The one that Dave Smith built, it's the old Burgundy number 22 car. It's a Chevy sedan. Everything's there. It just needs to be updated.
Yeah, we got one in the backyard too.
Oh yeah, there is one right in the driveway in case anybody wants to swing by and
Nope,
pick.
that's not for sale.
No, it's not for sale.
That's an original. That's the original 71 car that actually ran in the old days.
Yeah, that one's not for sale. Maybe it'll be out one day, but it's not for sale.
No, and Chris, obviously, your racing schedule is taking a hit due to some weddings. How is the work going on the 71 old timer this off season?
It's going. I'm just waiting for James to print me a spacer for my water pump, and then we are good to go.
We should make a note that that's 3D printing, and Chris will not be cutting out a piece of paper and sticking it on his race car.
Yes, no. Laser cam fabrications, 3D printing, and laser cutting. Go check them out.
And again, still here with George Jenson. And George, you're also involved with the Victoria Auto Racing Hall of Fame. Maybe tell us a little bit what's coming up with them. They have their induction ceremony coming up on April the 7th, I believe, on the Saturday.
Yeah, this April the 7th, Saturday. The inductions are at 1:30, and it's going to be another good show. There's 4 inductees, and proud to say that Jerry Ferry is one of them, and George Wade, Bob Emerson, and
Ken Emerson, and
I
believe Dave Morris is the 4th inductee.
Dave Morrison ran old timers. He used to run a Terraplane, the number 11 car, so that's pretty cool for another old timer. There's a lot of them out there that ran those cars that are still around, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely you get to see the full cycle of people. And Chris, got something to add?
Yeah, I was just curious. Have you ever ran on the dirt or had a chance to go dirt tracking at all?
Oh, yeah, I love the dirt. It's kind of funny because the very first time I ran the dirt, I went up there with Western Speedway set up, and actually my cousin was here from Ontario, and first time he's ever seen me run. So I go out in the dirt and I spin out, and I go out again and I spin out, and I think I spun out about 6 times just in warm-ups. And I came in, and this is when the old veterans come around to help you.
Yeah.
And Milt Barnes comes over and he goes, wow, what's going on? And I said, oh, I'm trying to figure it out. And he says, how much air you got in the tires? And I said, oh, same as what I run at Western. He says, oh, no. Drop them down to about 5 pounds in the left rear, 10 pounds, and go from there. And I went, okay, well, I dropped the air pressure down and went back out and spun out and came back in again. So I ended up putting, must have put about 10 turns across in the car just to cross it up. And then I went back out for qualifying, and I qualified third fast.
Oh, there you
so
go.
it sort of surprised me. And then I went out and won the trophy dash. And then I went out and won the heat race. And then I went out and won the main event all that day. So it was the first time on the dirt. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, of course, the old timers used to run up at Cassidy Speedway, and that's kind of the cool thing, the versatility of those cars. They can run pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I think the older ones can. Some of the newer ones, I think, would be a little hard on the dirt.
A little more pavement focus.
Especially my car. You know, I'd leave mine at home and probably take Chris's car out in the dirt.
Yeah. Hey, why don't you talk about our tour we got going on down south?
Yeah, we got a good tour again. You know, the U.S. cars, they help us out a lot, and we're gonna head down to July 6th to Roseburg, Oregon, and run with the Oregon guys down there, and then we come back up and run Butch's track at South Sound on the 7th of July, and then we have a few days off, and we're gonna travel across and. State Line has been bugging the club for quite a while to get back there, so they ended up putting in a Wednesday night race for just the old timers, which is pretty cool, and that's on the 11th, which is a Wednesday, and then we we go to Wenatchee for the double header on the 13th, 14th, so it's a pretty good trip for everybody that wants to go, and be pretty exciting.
What's the car count looking like right now?
I think we got about 7 of our cars going right now, which is pretty cool. I'm hoping to have a couple more join us at Wenatchee, and maybe Butch's track. I know a couple of guys are talking about that, but I'm not sure if they're going to go. But with our cars, and they've got about 8 cars coming out of State Line, because Eldon is in the back as president of the North Early Stocks down there.
Stocks.
Yeah, and then the Oregon guys are going to be about 6 to 8 of them, so we could probably have about 20 some odd cars with all 3 groups.
That would be nice to see. That's some of our showings down there have not been the greatest over the last couple of years, but we're getting back up there. And
yeah, you know, it's car count, and that's
the dollar helps too.
Yeah, the dollar. Yeah, I know that's pretty hard, but the money, we're getting pretty good money at the tracks this year, especially State Line stepped up big time. So I think it's going to be, affordable like the old days when we used to travel down there when Ross Rocket would set everything up. You could pretty well go from track to track and not spend your own money. So, get gas money and stuff like that. So just your spending money is what you got to look for. And everybody always helps you out with camping. Wenatchee, you camp at the track free. If we go down to State Line, Eldon's Farm's free for everybody to camp there. So it's pretty good that way.
And obviously you go down to the U.S. for a few races, and Daffodil Cup the last few years, the U.S. guys have come up and run the 2-night show, and you guys have returned the hospitality.
Yeah, we're trying to get them up this year for the June 29th, 30th night. so we can start the tour in Victoria and then head down to the U.S. So we're working on car count for that. As June 30th is Old Timer are going to be the main show, so I'm pretty excited about that. Finally with our car count, we're going to be a mainstay show, so that's really cool. And I'd like to thank Daryl Crocker for recognizing our car count and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's going to be on the, I believe, the Canada Day long weekend there, and part of the mid-season championship. That's going to be a pretty cool weekend of racing. I think they have the AMCA Dwarf Car Invitational too, so a lot of dwarf cars there. And again, yeah, cool to see the old timers finally get a little bit of spotlight shine on them.
Yeah, it is. It's been a while since we've had a little bit of spotlight, so it's really cool. I'm quite excited about that night, and we're working on a sponsor for that night, and getting U.S. cars, obviously, and then we're going to run for the very first memorial race for the past drivers. So we've set a trophy up for past drivers, and every year we're going to have a different driver that from the past that's passed away. Their family donate or give the trophy to the winner, so it should be pretty cool.
Cool. Let's switch gears here, and I just want to talk about, obviously, for me, is racing is a huge family thing, and you already talked about your son and daughter are both racing with you now. So let's talk about that. How did they get? When did they approach you and say, "Dad, I want to drive"?
I don't think they ever approached me. I just sort of offered to ask them if they wanted to drive. I think they were happy doing what they were doing, and I know Kaylin wanted to drive for a while, and then once Kaylin started, Chris sort of said, and the opportunity for those cars to come up. So I picked up those two cars for them, and they've got to look after them. I can't afford to look after three cars, so it's up to them to look after those cars. So,
what's going on with the 12 car this year?
Daryl's probably going to make a couple races this year in it. I've asked him if he wanted me to look after it again and put different drivers in it, but he'd like to do it himself, and he's wanting to keep the car because he wants to put his son in the car.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a couple of more years away before his son can step into the car. He's actually getting him into a little bit of go-karting this year. Cool. To get him set up for it, but they don't want to get rid of it because obviously it was Ron's dad, so it's a sort of a keepsake thing too, right?
And talk about how important it is to have your wife on board with your racing.
Oh, she's been on board since day one, and been secretary of the club for 20 some odd years. Yeah. It's something we both enjoy, and it's something we do together, and it's important. This is our 38th anniversary coming up, so it's pretty cool. And she's been there from day one, and she's let me do this, and she hasn't, nothing. We can't do that, or no, we can. It's just how can we do this? And
just figure it out.
Cool. Oh yeah, I can't say enough about her.
Obviously, Chris is kind of involved with a bit of the parts and racing dealing business there at West Shore Spring 4x4 now. Maybe talk about a little bit more about what he's doing over there at West Shore.
Well, he's doing really well there. He's excited. He's been at Lordco for a long, long time and helped a lot of racers out. And he's so keen in racing, probably because of me and putting him in that spotlight. But he's setting up a whole new program to bring in parts through West Shore for racing, and they've got on board with the same companies that the other, I guess, racing guys have, and so they can bring in parts, anything you need. They can bring in wheels, tires, anything that's racing sort of thing, So it's pretty cool that West Shore's stepping up for the whole community and auto racing in total.
Yeah, it gives a bit of a break to all maybe the bigger guys in the game that like A&A does a lot of work, I know, and in Victoria at least, and Alien and those guys.
Well, with Lejeune closing down, there's always a little bit of a gap, and everybody used to go there and get parts. A&A's been a big part of my stuff. Actually, my car's there right now, and A&A is fixing some of my damage from the crashes. So that's the thanks to Kenny and them there at A&A. But parts-wise, we've lost a few parts distributors, so it's nice to get West Shore to step up and be a racing distributor.
And obviously, racing on an island, kind of getting parts and getting the right things is a little bit of a challenge. Maybe talk about some of the things that people might not realize are a little bit more difficult when you're racing off of a rock.
Well, yeah, everything's difficult when you're on the rock. Even work, even at Rand Automotive, getting parts here sometimes are hard to do. And with the catalogs now and buying all over, it's a lot easier, I guess, to get parts, but it's still hard to get them up here. So having a parts company like West Shore, A&A, and all them to bring parts in, it's definitely a lot easier on you.
That's one good thing about the old timers. If you needed to just get out there, you could probably go to Malahat Auto Wrecking and something like that and find the part. If you wanted to just get out there,
yeah, for sure. All the auto wreckers have always helped out the old timers. Yeah. Especially like Spalding's down in the States. We've damaged a lot of cars, and Spalding's have come up and helped us out getting used parts. Everything on those things are old. The straight axles, the drum brakes on the back, and that sort of thing. That's all available. But you know what? It is getting harder to find. Even the auto wreckers aren't carrying older stuff like that anymore.
Yeah, I got to put a new rear end in my car pretty quick here. It's leaking everywhere.
The joys of race car ownership. And George, obviously you mentioned drum brakes, straight axles. Maybe to somebody listening that doesn't really know the makeup of an old timer, just knows that it's old car body with a 6-cylinder in it. Maybe talk a little bit about the makeup of what an old timer actually is.
Well, the old timer is just a stock frame that has a roll cage on it. They have a 6-cylinder engine in it that we can do a little bit of work to. It has a straight axle with leaf springs front and rear. Pretty well manual or automatic transmission. There's this old Saginaws that are running in there. They do allow mini clutches, which is a little bit of more of a racing style clutch, and then with the automatics you can take the torque converter out, and which makes it a little bit more peppy and stuff like that. So, but there are most of those parts, leaf springs and stuff like that, you can get at the auto wreckers. So, the straight axles, there's still a few out there, and the 6-cylinders are starting to get hard to find, but they're still out there. So it's all used parts that you can still get.
Yeah, that's all my questions.
Chris has officially run out of questions here, but
exhausted
the cheat sheet has dried up a little bit here, but obviously being in racing for how long you have been, George, what keeps you coming back to the track? What keeps you wanting to climb behind the wheel?
Oh, it's true addiction. Once if anybody gets behind the wheel, you know that now, Chris, behind the wheel. Yeah. If you get behind the wheel of a car, it is just, you're out there, you're challenging your buddies out there, you have no stress, you have no worries in the world, you just go out there and compete, and, it's actually, as much as it is racing, it is a stress relief for me, working and being busy and doing all that. But when I get behind the car, it's kind of relaxing. It's, you get the butterflies, but once you're out there, it's there's nothing like it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the world just kind of goes away. It's awesome.
Yeah, obviously a lot of focus required, and again, like to thank our guest George Jenson for being on Short Track Radio Podcast, and hope you enjoyed yourself, George. And I guess Chris, you gotta do the social media plugs as per usual.
You can find us on Facebook, Miller Family Racing, Miller Family Racing 71 on Instagram, and Short Track Radio on Facebook, Short Track Radio on Instagram. If you'd like to sponsor us, let us know.
we'd really appreciate it. Chris,
I had to buy a new mic today. So
Chris, if you're wondering why Chris's audio is very clear, Chris has dropped a pretty penny on a new microphone, and it's way outclassing our other $35 mics, which are still trucking along, fortunately. But again, yeah, and as I'm employed again by Western Speedway, I'm inclined to mention, if you haven't liked the Western Speedway Facebook page, head on over and do that. And if you want any more information on upcoming events at Western Speedway, head to www.westernspeedway.ca for more information. And that's going to do it for this edition.
Let's just let George plug his sponsors. Or
that's important too, I guess.
Well, I'd like to really thank, I think this year I got my major sponsor stepped up for the first time, is Rand Automotive, and I'm really excited to have them as a full-time sponsor this year. That's why you'll probably see the change in the car. Island Bakery has been with me from day one. It's like this is their 26th year on the car.
That's crazy.
Alpine has been with me from, I think this is their 15th year on the car. So those sponsors, Howie's Car Corral, that's come on board. Like got Lucas Oil, which is a huge sponsor. It was pretty cool to get something like that. So, all these sponsors, all the years that I've run, it's the sponsors that's made me be able to be out there, because without them I wouldn't be able to race.
Yeah, it definitely helps out.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and what you guys are doing here that's pretty awesome. What you guys have stepped up and this program that you've started, kudos to you, man, because this is great. This is great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't think when I mentioned it to Cole, I don't think he thought I was actually going to buy the stuff and do it, but
no, I did not until I actually showed up for the first podcast session. And it all worked, which was the other miracle. But again, thanks to George for coming on. And this has been another edition of Short Track Radio. Tune in whenever we feel like posting our next one.
Bye-bye.